What's going on there, YouTube? And welcome to Fresh Comic Stories. Guys, this is the channel where we basically sit down and cover different kinds of comic book stories. Now, guys, today we are going to jump back over to Ultimate Marvel, and we're going to continue our coverage over that universe with the second half of the Ultimate Spider-Man Clone Saga storyline. Now, we covered the first half last week, but this week, guys, we are going to cover the second half. So guys, I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do, please hit that like button down below and also subscribe for more comic book videos in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below. But guys, let's dive into Ultimate Spider-Man, the second half of the Clone Saga. I do hope you enjoy. Now we pick up where our last video left off at, where you now have Nick Fury and his army of spider slayers outside the Parker's house trying to bring him in to cover up this cloning problem that is going on. But remember, Gwen Stacy came back to life. At the end of our last video, she turned into a new version of Carnage. But something else to point out is that Aunt May had a heart attack at the end of our last video. And so she is dying while you have Carnage Gwen fighting against the Spider Slayers. Last but not least, remember that Peter Parker's father revealed to be alive this whole time. And now you have Richard Parker tell Peter to go out there and stop all of this while he tries to take care of Aunt May. Now you do have Peter and Carnage Gwen try to fight against Nick Fury's army of Spider Slayers, but there are too many of them to handle, and so they both get blasted to the ground, to the point where it seems like this could mean Peter is going to get arrested. But then we see the Fantastic Four jump in and try to defend Peter, because they know what Nick Fury is doing is outrageous. Now, you have Peter catch the Fantastic Four up to speed on what had happened, including his Aunt May having a heart attack. And so you have Susan Storm walk in to receive both Richard and Aunt May. Now, this is something else to point out, is that Richard Parker, who is supposed to be a doctor, he has not done anything to help Aunt May during her heart attack. So keep that in mind. Now, once you have Susan Storm get Aunt May out of there so that Peter, Carnage Gwen, and the rest of the Fantastic Four can fight Nick Fury's army. But the fight does not really last that long. It does get wrapped up very quickly with Carnage Gwen being turned back to normal and Nick Fury's army shooting Peter with enough energy to stop him from attacking anymore. This time it does seem like Peter is about to be arrested. Now we jump over to Mary Jane, who is still being held hostage by Kane at the old Oscorp building, where we see him telling Mary Jane once again that he had infected her with the Oz formula, which the reason why he did this is because Peter always wanted to find a way to protect Mary Jane. And so with this being the clone of Peter, he just pursued that dream. But with Mary Jane hearing she has been infected with the Oz formula, she turns into some kind of monster. Now, all over online, people kept saying this was her turning into the Demogoblin in the Ultimate Marvel universe. Now we do jump back over to Peter being arrested by Nick Fury for the whole cloning problem. But that is when you have at the very last second the mysterious Spider-Woman appear and take him away from all of that mess. Now this is where we kind of learn a little bit of what is going on with the whole story with Peter Parker and a bunch of clones. Now the first thing you have this mysterious woman do is reveal that she is a clone of Peter Parker as well, but she is going by the name of Jessica Drew, which of course in the main Marvel universe that name belongs to Spider-Woman. Now there's a huge difference between the two, with the Ultimate Marvel Jessica Drew being a clone of Peter Parker and having all of his spider powers plus organic webbing as well. In the main Marvel universe, she has her own set of powers and has nothing to do with Peter Parker. Her origin is more tied with Hydra than being a clone of Peter Parker. Now you have the Ultimate Marvel Jessica Drew tell Peter what she remembered. The first day she was created, she was greeted by Ben Reilly. Now remember that Ben Reilly is not a clone of Peter Parker in this universe. He is a young African American man, but he was the assistant of Kurt Connor when they both were working on the original Carnage. But something else for you guys to remember is that they used the blood of Peter Parker to make Carnage, since they were trying to replace Venom, hoping to finish Richard Parker's project. But after Kurt Connor got arrested for making Carnage, Ben Reilly got away and also took the last sample of Peter's blood. But she tells Peter that the day she was made, she was greeted by Ben Reilly, how she was made again to be another project to replace Captain America. Because remember, Captain America was the breakout hero in the 1940s. And so you had all these different companies try to reproduce what made Captain America. That sounded like what Ben Reilly was trying to do. But while telling Jessica everything, that is when you have her get introduced to Cassandra Webb, which another character I will get into in another video. But right when they were giving her the rundown on everything, you have Carnage Gwen started to attack the base and, well, free the other clones. Now, after she told the story, they both agreed that one of the clones must have taken Mary Jane. And so now their goal is to find out where did this one clone took her to, which Jessica Drew was able to figure out it was the old Oscorp building. And so you have the two go there and they see her turn into the Demo Goblin, which as soon as she sees Peter, she turns back into her normal self. Now you have Peter punch Kane in the face, which was the clone who turned Mary Jane into that monster. But you have Peter ask the question, where did he get the Oz formula from? That is when you have Dr. Octopus walk into the room saying he got it from him, that he is the father of Kane. But we don't get the chance to dive into that. Instead, we jump over to the X-Men right now watching the news, which this is another reminder that, hey, Kitty Pryde is technically the girlfriend of Peter Parker right now. But with her watching the news, she sees his house on TV, knowing that something is going on, which makes her tell the X-Men they are going to Queens to see if he needs some kind of help from them. Now, the story does shift over to Susan Storm and Richard Parker getting Aunt May to the hospital. But while they hand her over to the doctors, you have Susan Storm ask for a blood sample of Richard Parker because she believes something is up with him because he was unable to do anything to help Aunt May earlier with her heart attack since he's supposed to be a doctor. Now getting back over to Peter Parker, Jessica Drew, Nick Fury, Doc-Ock, and the rest of the Fantastic Four, you have Doc-Ock tell everyone in the room that he was the one who was behind the clones, that he made a deal with the American government because there are people who do not like Nick Fury and his plan to make the next Captain America. And so you have Doc-Ock say these clones were the beginning for him to replace Nick Fury. Now you have Peter Parker hand Mary Jane over to the Fantastic Four so Reed can find a way to get the Oz out of her. Now there is one more thing Doc-Ock reveals, that Richard Parker and Gwen Stacy are just another clones of Peter Parker that he made. And so all of these people popping up left and right is because of Doc-Ock. Now after all of this being revealed, you have Nick Fury tell his men to leave the room so Peter and his clones can have a conversation with Doc-Ock alone, which is code for that Nick Fury is on Peter Parker's side and wants Peter to beat down on Doc-Ock and get rid of him. And so you have Peter and his clones start to fight against Doc-Ock, which, by the way, he lost his arms back in the Hollywood storyline. But that is when he reveals that even though he lost his mechanical arms, he has the ability to control metal like Magneto. That the Oz formula explosion that gave the birth to Green Goblin, Hobgoblin, and Spider-Man, but also bonded the arms to Doc-Ock, gave him the ability to control metal just like Magneto. Now we jump back over to Reed Richards, the Thing, in the Human Torch at the Baxter Building, because right now Reed is trying to get rid of the Oz formula out of Mary Jane's body. But that is when she turns back into the Demogoblin and started to fight against the few members of the Fantastic Four. Now at first, they have a hard time trying to contain her, but when they show her the Scorpion clone of Peter Parker, she calms down and turns back into her human form. We then go over to Susan Storm talking to Richard Parker, where she tells him that he is a clone of Peter Parker, but he does not believe her because he was able to remember everything from the real Richard Parker's life. But she tells him that those memories were planted in his head by Doc-Ock. Plus right now, he is aging to the point where he will hit an older age, which will lead to him dying right there in front of Susan Storm on the roof. Now we finally jump over to Peter Parker and Jessica Drew trying to handle Doc-Ock, which, by the way, Doc-Ock killed the other clones who were there, like Kane in the six-armed one. But you have Doc-Ock controlling all of the metal in the room, hoping to kill off Peter and Jessica Drew, which he will just start from scratch all over. He will just make a bunch of new clones. And so this fight does last a few pages. But at the end, of course, you have Peter and Jessica able to knock out Doc-Ock and hand him back over to S.H.I.E.L.D. But after they defeat him, you have Jessica Drew leave before S.H.I.E.L.D. is able to come in there and grab her. And so with that, you have her out there as a free agent for any writer to use in their stories. But then we see Peter go outside to Nick Fury, which is Peter telling Nick to take him in. But that is when you have Peter and Nick find out that it was the FBI who made the deal with Doc-Ock to make these clones. Before Peter is able to punch the man in charge of the FBI, you have Johnny Storm come to take Peter to see Mary Jane at the Baxter Building. Now this is the big moment of the closing chapter of this story, because after Peter gets picked up by Johnny Storm, he takes him to the Baxter Building to see Mary Jane, where you have Reed reveal that he was able to get rid of the Oz formula from the blood of Mary Jane, so she is no longer be able to turn into the Demogoblin. Also, you have Mary Jane and Peter reveal that they are still in love with one another. But you have Reed and Franklin Storm walk up to Peter and tell him that they can do the same thing for Peter Parker, that they can get rid of the Oz formula from his blood, and he will no longer be Spider-Man. Now you have Peter Parker shocked by this because he has been through so much in the past few hours. And so you have Peter tell Reed Richards that he needs some time to think about what to do with his powers. But the first thing he needs to do is check up on Aunt May to see if she's better now. And so he has the Human Torch take Peter to the hospital to see if she is okay. Now, of course, when Peter gets there, he is upset at himself because this is all his fault, with him being Spider-Man and the fact that his clones put so many of his loved ones in danger. But while he gets a few words into his Aunt May while she is unconscious, you have Susan Storm walk into the room to tell Peter that his father was a clone, that he just died a few minutes ago. And so now Peter lost his father all over again thanks to this cloning problem. Now, after Susan Storm leaves the room, you do have Nick Fury walk in. Now, at first, his goal was to arrest Peter Parker and try to hide this problem. But after seeing what he has been going through, Nick Fury realized that what he has been doing is actually hurting Peter instead of trying to help Peter with this problem. And so you have Nick talk to Peter as a friend, but also a father figure as well, where he tells Peter that he is so sorry for what he did to him, that he believes that Peter will become a great superhero one day. But then after Nick Fury leaves, you have Kitty Pryde appear at the hospital, but she does not confront Peter at all. Instead, she watches over him right when Aunt May wakes up, where you have those two discuss the fact of him being Spider-Man. But again, Kitty Pryde doesn't walk up to them. She stays hidden, but she asks Jean Grey and Charles Xavier to wipe the mind of Aunt May because she remembers that Peter believes it would be too hard on her if she finds out that he was Spider-Man. But you have both Jean Grey and Charles Xavier tell Kitty Pryde, no, we cannot do that to someone because we do not have the right to wipe someone's mind. Now, the story does end with a few things happening before the book closes. The first thing we see is that Peter goes to visit Jessica Drew once again, and this is her confirming that she will be leaving New York. She does not want to be tied down to S.H.I.E.L.D. or Peter. She wants to have a life of her own to deal with. We also see that Nick Fury is taking the Gwen Stacy Carnage clone with him along with the Scorpion clone as well. Now, if I remember correctly, we do not see the Peter Parker Scorpion clone ever again in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, to close this video, we see Mary Jane and Peter Parker declaring that they are back together again by making out in the middle of the street. But while they were making out, Kitty Pryde was going to check up on Peter, only to see she was correct. Peter is still in love with Mary Jane. Now guys, this is the part of the video where I basically sit down and give my thoughts on about this book. And guys, I have to say, when it comes to Ultimate Spider-Man, the Clone Saga storyline, it's one of my favorite storylines I have ever read. And the reason why I say that is because when I was a young boy collecting Ultimate Marvel, this was one of the first few stories I completed. I collected part 1 through 8 by myself. At first, I had to go back and collect all the old issues of Ultimate Marvel because I was behind when I got into comics. But when it came to the Ultimate Spider-Man Clone Saga, this was the first storyline I collected from part 1 to part 8. Now, I have to say that this storyline does a good job of not being so confusing and crazy like the original Clone Saga back in the 1990s. If you guys remember, back in the 1990s, we had the Clone Saga back then, and that Clone Saga was really hated on by Spider-Man fans because how long it was and how confusing it was. And so I have to give Brian Michael Bendis props of just taking the Clone Saga in the Ultimate Marvel Universe and only doing 8 parts and saying, we're done. That's it. Now, thanks to the Ultimate Clone Saga, a few things do come out of this. We do get the Jessica Drew character, which, by the way, she becomes a fan favorite in the Ultimate Marvel Universe down the road. But guys, I have to say, this is a storyline you guys must go out there and collect for your own personal collection. But anyways guys, I'm going to go ahead and end today's video, so please leave me a like down below and also subscribe for more comic book videos in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read, please let me know in the comments below. But guys, I will see you on the next comic book video. Later guys.